What is this tool that functions like pliers, but it seems to snip and spread simultaneously? It is made of metal, and the springs seem to act as a return. When the handle is squeezed, the two pinchers close and spread apart from one another. My first thought was an older pair of wire strippers. It could also be a crimping tool, or a rubber band castration tool for cattle. Have any of you seen such a thing? It's a mid-century speedy piston wringer, also known as piston ring pliers and piston ring expander, used to expand piston rings to install the rings over the piston in an internal combustion engine. They definitely look vintage, but much more sturdy compared to modern ones. Modern versions have fewer moving parts, ostensibly to reduce manufacturing costs. What is this thing that looks like an old tilt meter, but the needle settles straight down at 90 degrees? The pin can be inserted into holes on either side of the handle and magnetically holds the needle in place. It was found in Ontario, but Googling the company, Hughes Owens Company Limited, doesn't help. I thought the pin might be to secure the needle for transport, but why two pinholes then? Maybe it's to grab the needle if it crosses a threshold, sort of like a minimum-maximum thing. Any ideas? It's a dipping needle compass, also known as a miner's compass. It's a tool for measuring the Earth's magnetic field and the angle at which it enters or exits the Earth. It was used in surveying, mining, and prospecting, as well as for studying and demonstrating magnetism. It was patented on May 12, 1908 by Pascal H. Stedman of Newport, Rhode Island. The magnetic needle is pivoted to rotate in a vertical plane, pointing in the direction of the Earth's magnetic intensity. What are these metal tools with wooden handles found at my great-grandparents' house? Underneath the brass nibs is inscribed Kuffel and Esser Company, New York. I've been able to search that company, and sets that include what looks like these tools from the 1930s to 1940s, but I can't figure out the specific name or how to use them. On the side, there is a flat knob that turns, opening or closing the space down the middle. Any help would be most appreciated. They are 1920s freehand lettering pens, just designed to produce a constant width line, no matter what direction you draw in. That's common with technical pens. You control the flow of ink with the screw on the side. They really aren't difficult to use. Just add some ink and play with them, and you will get a feel for them. What is this weird 1970s looking electronic? It's a thin device consisting of two laminate panels surrounding some kind of electronics with a two-prong electric cord coming out the back. It's pretty light and maybe as heavy as a modern laptop. It didn't feel like it was solid all the way through, but there was some empty space between the front and back panels. Part of why I think it contains electronics, that and the cord. It was found at the thrift store next to a Wii balance board and a Wii balance board knockoff, based on the employee's best guess of what it was supposed to do. They didn't know either. Any guesses? It's a warm-o tray, a food warming tray by Atlantic Precision Works from around the 1960s. It's a heating pad for food, sort of like an electric chafing dish. You put food to be served on it to keep it warm during the meal. It was a fairly common home accessory back in the day, especially when you have guests over. What is this weird tool? I got this from an estate sale because it looked unique. It looks like it has an HGH logo on the handle. I'm thinking it's a tool for large gas valves or hydrants. Does anyone have any knowledge on this tool? It's an old international harvester wrench for buggies and tractors from around the 1920s. It has an S-curved handle and multiple sized openings for the different sized nuts being worked on. Back in the day, machinery came with the tools needed to work on them. Many folks didn't have much for tools. Up until the 80s, Ford made more money selling tools than cars. It could still be that way, but the last time I worked for Ford was in the 80s. What is this clamshell-shaped plastic piece on a metal rod found on the dash of a vintage truck? It looks like it can bend at the joint. I saw this in a vintage Chevy truck at a classic car show this past weekend. Probably something totally obvious, but for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. I thought maybe a CB radio holder at first, but the bend didn't make sense. I wasn't allowed inside the truck, so I couldn't tell if there was a switch to turn it on or off. Does anyone know the use of this item? It's a traffic light viewer, a popular accessory on models throughout the 50s and early 60s. While stopped at a traffic light, this assembly allows the driver to see the traffic signal clearly, without being obstructed by the roof designs of the time. What is this object from an Italian book printed in 1558? The bottom object is a flintlock mechanism for an arquebus. But what is the object with rope and metal above it? This is a device or symbol used by Annibale Caro in a book printed by Seth Viotti in Parma in 1558. It looks like metal with a rope running through it. The rope seems to be attached in two places. The thing is broken and ends in some kind of decorative ball. Italian sources describe this as a stirrup with a broken handle, but I'm not certain. If that's right, can anyone find an image of a similar stirrup from this period? Thanks in advance. That's a wheel lock winding device, a key for essentially cocking it. It fits over a square nub on the drum to wind up the mechanism. The arquebus mechanism is a wheel lock. The wheel has a spiral spring like a clock. The wheel is wound, and when the trigger is pulled, it spins against the flint, making the sparks to fire the powder. The key would normally be attached to the person's belt, shot pouch, or powder flask by the cord. I have an interest in the history and development of firearms. The early stuff is really cool. What is this Nazi stamp on this US dollar bill? I can't make out what it says. I was given this as tender at a job I worked at, 3 of them actually, and I made no comment to the customer when I was ringing him up. He seemed to be aware that they were on there though, as he presented the notes face down like this so the stamps were visible. A quick Google search doesn't seem to bring up much except fake World War II era currency and Nazi post stamps. I believe the date on these was recent, 1990s or so. Can anyone point me in the right direction for what the stamp signifies, or what it says? Sobibor in Poland was a death camp. It was an extermination camp built and operated by Nazi Germany as part of Operation Reinhard. It was located in the forest near the village of Żłobek Duży in the general government region of German-occupied Poland. As an extermination camp rather than a concentration camp, Sobibor existed for the sole purpose of murdering Jews. The vast majority of prisoners were gassed within hours of arrival. In total, some 170,000 to 250,000 people were murdered at Sobibor, making it the 4th deadliest Nazi camp after Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Belzec. What is this wooden thing with strings and pegs hanging off of it, found in Nova Scotia, Canada? Around 20 inches tall, and there are holes for the pegs to fit into. I can't tell you much else about it. Does anybody know what it is? Please tell us down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Let's make life fun.